Hey everyone, Ben Nelson, the Everyday Real Estate Investor, here with another podcast. And I am excited because I have another awesome podcast guest today. Jeff Holst of Old Fashioned Real Estate is here, friend, real estate investor, podcast host of his own. And I love the name because, we met actually at another event. We met over an Old Fashioned, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
So that's how we first got introduced to each other, just talking real estate with the drink in hand, which was awesome. It's always great to network and meet people, and we were able to connect. Jeff, thanks for being on the show. I'm excited to have you share your story.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Well, okay, let's jump right into it. You've had quite a journey that you have gone through. Let's just start with you sharing a little bit about your journey, kind of where you were some time ago, and just to give people the history and the context, and then where you were able to go from there, and fill in any blanks there as you go. But just kind of give an overview of what your story is.
Yeah, so that's a tricky one, right? How far back do you go? I was
Right.
born on a Thursday.
Oh my God. Okay, maybe not go that far, but yeah, let's go. Yeah.
So, no, I think I know where you're going with that. So I was a bankruptcy attorney. I could go back even further and talk about how I gave up bad days when I was 17, which is an interesting story in and of itself. But I was a bankruptcy attorney who always wanted to invest in real estate. I was like, someday I'm going to invest in real estate. And the thing about someday is it's not guaranteed, right? Like, it's not a certainty. And I learned that. It was driven home to me very, very clearly when I was 30 years old and I was diagnosed with leukemia. I thought I had weeks to live. Fortunately, I was wrong, and I'm still kicking now 15 years later. But after that happened, I thought, I got to do something different. I can't wait for someday. You can't count on the future. And it took a couple of years. I ended up being forced into personal bankruptcy myself because I wasn't able to work for quite a period of time there. And I had a small practice that was just eating money. When it didn't bring in money, when we were working, it went really well. But when we didn't have any attorneys working, it didn't go so well. So I ended up in personal bankruptcy in 2010. And from there, I was like, well, I'm going to go take a job somewhere. So I moved to Tennessee from Michigan. Took a job, got a small bonus. I think it was like $20,000. It was pretty good. I mean, it was a good bonus, but relatively speaking, small when you have no assets and no income whatsoever at all.
Yeah.
And also I had $100,000 in student loans that hadn't gone away. So I was in this negative net worth situation with no credit, and then I thought, well, now's someday I'm going to start buying real estate now. And in 2010, the bottom of the recession, with no money, no credit. So that's kind of how I did it. But then flash forward, the short version to give people a peek of where we're going is 7 years later, I was able to retire from real estate investing. And that was 2017. And I have not had a regular job since. I do still do some stuff, podcasting, writing, investing, but I don't have a real type of, corporate job ever since then. So
that's awesome. So from personal bankruptcy to essentially financially free over the course of 7 years, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's super inspiring, because I know there's people in similar spots, right? That are like, how do I do this? How do I make this happen? And I'm gonna jump a little bit into the mindset side of this, because I have a mentor that has said, when you're in that spot, you're like, okay, I'm going to buy real estate. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this off. And then that voice in your head comes in and says, you want to buy real estate? Try buying lunch. Right. And it's like, so that voice pops in and is like, yeah, right. You're going to buy real estate. You can't even pay your phone bill or whatever. Right. So talk about that a little bit, and how that, if that was a battle of yours, and how you worked through that in your head.
Well, so I'd spent years wanting to do real estate, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad right out of high school. And I even had like the Carlton Sheets No Money Down program.
Oh my goodness. I mention that sometimes, and people are like, who's that? It's so
yeah. I actually had the CDs, I didn't get the cassette tapes because I'm not quite that old, but I had the CDs. So I had all this knowledge that I've been working on for years. So I was comfortable with the knowledge part. But yeah, I mean, what happened is I had a friend who was flipping houses at the time and also buying some rentals. And I, uh, I had known him since law school. And I said to him one day, I said, if you run into something that you want to partner on, let me know. And I had that 20,000 ish dollars. Some of it was bonus, but some of it was just savings from from about a 6 month period of working. And I said, hey, I can probably spend up to about $15,000. So if something comes up, and this is 2010. Stuff was a lot cheaper then than it is now.
Right.
Yeah, he called me one day and he said, I have this condo. It's a bank owned foreclosure. I just put it under contract for $30,000, and it was 100,000 a couple of years earlier. And he said, I think this is a really good long term buy and hold. Like, do you want to split it with me? And I was like, yes. So I went to my now ex-wife and I said, hey, Travis wants to do this deal. Like, can we go do this deal? And she said to me, okay, but if it doesn't work out, we're never investing in real estate again.
Wow,
Fortunately,
that's an
yeah,
ultimatum. Wow.
yeah. So it was more her than me, right? I wasn't like, oh, I'm afraid. I'm like, you know what? Like, I got to do something different. I might die. I want to make sure my wife is taken care of if I die. We need income coming in. If I can't
Yeah.
work, I don't want to go through bankruptcy again. So I just started with this idea that this is actually the most important thing I can be doing is investing in real estate right now. And we still own that condo now. It's been whatever, 10 years or so, I guess. Yeah, it's been
Probably worth more than
almost.
30,000 now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah, it's probably 150,000, something
That's
like that, and it rents for $1,400 a month. And we ended up buying another one in the same building for a similar price point shortly after that. And those two condos actually ended up forming the basis for the real estate that I did going forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to point one maybe not so obvious thing out. Obvious to some, but maybe not others. That you had about $20,000 and a bunch of student loans and no income, and most people, I think, would not do what you did, right? Because they'd be too afraid and say, "Well, I can't put $15,000 into this. I'm taking all of my money and putting it in this investment. What am I supposed to do?" And that scarcity mindset and that fear comes in and is like, "No, I got to keep this money so I can figure out, you know, what I do from here, and I got to be able to pay my bills every month and all of that stuff, right? So I got to have that cushion." And really that decision was your launching point. And if you would have made that decision, maybe you would have never bought anything, right? If you would have,
Yeah, I
hey,
mean,
no, I got to hold on to this cash, right?
in fairness, I did have a job then, so I was
Okay,
making
but still,
$700-800 a week or something. I mean, but I wasn't. It wasn't enough to like feel super comfortable,
right,
right?
right. It's
Um,
still
and I,
nonetheless was your cushion,
yeah,
right? That you were like putting your, betting on
yeah,
yourself and that this is going to work out.
yeah,
And it
and
would have been
actually,
very easy to not do that.
we actually took $17,500 and put it in too. So it
Yeah,
was all but $2,500 of our money went
yeah,
into this one deal. But the thing is, if I hadn't done that, I'd be in a completely different place now. So I don't regret it at all. But yeah, I mean, it was a big decision, but it was something that I really wanted to do, and so I knew I had to figure it out. And uh,
yeah,
and I think that's one of the like that's a big takeaway for people who are starting out is that like there's always a way, right? Because after that, I had no credit and no money, and I still figured out how to buy the next one about 2 months later. Um,
awesome. Talk about
yeah,
that.
think about that. That's even harder, right? Like I
Yeah,
just came out of a bankruptcy, so my credit score is like negative practically. Well,
yeah.
it's not quite that bad, but I'm a toxic borrower, so no one's going to loan me money.
I mean,
And
especially then, especially
yeah,
during those times. Yeah,
oh yeah, in the middle of the Great Recession,
yeah,
and I just came out of bankruptcy and just changed jobs, so I don't even have work history. 6 months
yeah,
on the new job or whatever. But I just figured out how to make it work. So like it was in the same building. So I convinced my buddy. I said, "Well, why don't you loan me some money to buy this?" Since he had the cash to buy the condo himself, and then I'll pay you back over the next 6 months. And then I just did that. I started like, we're going to pay him back. And I gave up all the cash flow on both deals towards paying him back, and then also took some additional resources from my job and paid him monthly payments to get it paid off as soon as I could.
awesome. Yeah, and now you have that cash flow. Yeah, so yeah, and I think both of those things go back to you got to put yourself out there, right? If you're saying, well, I want to invest in real estate, or hey, I'm in this bad spot. How do I work my way out of it? Sitting on your hands, or putting your head in the sand, or any of those, that's not going to get you there, right? You gotta ask those questions of proposition. You got to put yourself out there. Hey, if you see anything, I'm willing to partner. Let's do it. Hey, can you lend me some money to do this deal? I mean, there's simple questions, but a lot of people don't even ask them, right?
Yeah.
They just,
Well,
oh,
and,
they'd
and
never lend me money to do it, right?
Yeah, and I remember saying to him at the time, I said, he said, I don't know, man. I'm not sure. Like, it's a pretty big risk for me. Like, because, what do you have? Like, and I was like, well, one, I just put this money in the other one. So, like, at the very least, you can, you have this cross collateralization thing, right? But then also, I can't file bankruptcy. So, my personal guarantee is like set in stone at this point. I'm banned from bankruptcy for the next 7 years, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, dude, you have nothing to worry about. Like, I can't get out of this even if I wanted to.
Right. Right.
But really, really it was relationship based. This is my
Yeah.
buddy. He did it as a favor to me. And then, interestingly, after that, we were in this situation where we had these two free and clear condos, right? Well, I owed money to him, but, from the banking perspective, the two of them were free and clear and no mortgages on them. Um, and we were trying to figure out, like, how do we buy this next deal, because we found this duplex that we wanted to buy. We still own the duplex too, so we own both of these condos and the duplex to this day. The first three things I bought. After that, it gets a little bit choppier, right? Like, they're
Yeah.
not sold stuff and whatever, but these first three things. So we tried to find this duplex. It was like $70,000, and in a really good area. And we didn't neither of us had the money to do it. And I actually went to a family member of mine and I said, we have these two condos free and clear, right? Why don't you give us a $25,000 mortgage on each condo, and then we will have $50,000, and then we'll each put in 25,000 to buy this new duplex. So that's just what we did. We leveraged the condos with a private money loan, and then we ended up with 1/3 each of this duplex. And that model actually worked really well, because that family member ended up um, loaning us a few $100,000 on top of that to the new company that we owned with him. Like, he would loan money to the company. He'd be like, here's $100,000 at 6% interest only. And then we would go buy a deal and we'd each own a third of it. And so we were able to leverage that relationship to get, probably 7 or 8 more properties over the next 5 years.
That's awesome. And you were sharing those deals, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything was a partnership at that
Yeah,
point.
which is so, and that's one of the things that, you had touched on it earlier. You didn't have a lot of money, you didn't have credit. Uh, so how do you get? I mean, a lot of people stop there, right? And we both listen to the real estate guys a lot, and I can't remember. I mean, they talk about it. There's a couple other guys. I think it's Chris Martinson, if I'm remembering right. There's so many other resources, right? There's If you stop at your credit and your what you have in the bank, um, you're missing a lot of opportunity. What are your relationships? Where can you leverage those, right? What can you bring to the table? And partnerships are big, and I know I was here at one point too, just mindset wise. Well, I just want to do the deal myself, because I don't want to share in the profits, because I need all the profits for myself, or whatever. Like, it's either a greed thing, or it's just like, I can't do it unless I get all the profits, because I just need that income. You're missing out on opportunity, right? Because you're not willing to share the pie. And I always say a piece of the pie is definitely a lot more than all or no pie, right? So it's like, you
Yeah.
do the deal or
And
not. I'd rather
that's how
share
I
a
look
deal.
at these deals, right? Like, I could have bought none of those deals with my own money. Now there's
Exactly.
opportunity to buy stuff on my own, of course, but then, like, $17,000 wasn't going to buy that first condo. And the second condo, I didn't have any of my own money in it. So, like, clearly I couldn't have bought that one. I didn't have any money left to put into it.
Yeah.
And same with the duplex. And I mean, honestly, for the next several years, there are very few times I could have bought anything on my own. And I didn't. In fact, I'm like the opposite of you. Like, I have this, like, aversion to doing stuff on my own now. I do everything in partnerships, like, all different structures, and sometimes I'm the lead partner, and sometimes I'm a limited partner, and sometimes I'm a GP in a syndication. But like, whether it's just a regular joint venture or whatever, I've just always had partners. I might be 50-50. Sometimes I might be 75-25 even, right?
Yeah.
But I just always seem to end up with a partner on everything these days. And
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done a deal without a partner, actually.
That's awesome. And I'll say, I think what else, the other thing that brings, that partnerships bring to the table is that you have other people vetting the deal, right? And
Yeah,
so it's easy to look, hey, this is a deal, this is a deal. Well, if you can't find a partner on it or you can't find funds for it, maybe it's not a deal, right? So that's another kind of like additional underwriting almost, where
yeah. I
it's
mean,
like,
so
hey,
if
I
you
got other
can't
people
find
that have to think this is a good deal too.
Yeah, if you can't find money for a deal, it's either not a good deal or you're not presenting it correctly. There's really no other option because there's a lot of money on the sidelines.
Yeah,
Um, and sometimes you might struggle to find money for a deal, and it might be because your credibility is such that people don't believe what you're seeing, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then you need to work on that. So that's the other thing when partners are really great. Like the first apartment building that I bought, I don't believe that we could have got the bank loan had I not had a partner on it. I wasn't
yeah,
in a financial position to do it, and
yeah,
I think you can. You can borrow from their finances, you can borrow from their capital, you can borrow from their credibility, and it allows you to expand a lot faster, and it's good for them too, right? Like in an ideal situation, a partnership is win-win. Now, I've had some that have gone bad that I was like, man, I should have never brought a partner in on this too. So sometimes, there's a risk point. It's kind of like getting
sure.
married. When it works out, it's beautiful, and when it doesn't work out, it's messy.
Yeah, very true, very true. And I've seen both sides as well. So it's, yeah. But you know what? To your point, you just have to know that going in. You try to vet your partners as good as you can, know who they are, and match their goals with the investment, and try to partner with good people. But you know what? You can't not do a partnership just because one might go bad, right? Otherwise, again, you don't do
Yeah,
any of those
you're
deals
limiting
because of
yourself.
one potential bad. Yeah,
I have friends who don't do partnerships, and they're constantly struggling with problems that I don't struggle with. No, they have advantages too, right? Like they get 100% of the equity. That's an advantage, and but you also do 100% of the work, and 100% of the responsibility falls on you. And if you make a mistake, there's no one double checking your work.
yeah,
So um,
absolutely.
and I'm not saying I would never do anything without a partner. I certainly would. I almost did last year. I was going to buy this duplex, and then a friend of mine was telling me, "Oh, I wish I could find deals like that." And I was like, "Let's just split it." So I ended up not part ended up partnering on that one too. But it worked out because about 6 months later, came across another duplex that was in the similar area, and we ended up buying that one together. And I may not have had the resources to buy both anyway. So I mean,
Yeah,
it worked out anyway, so it
yeah,
didn't really
yeah.
matter.
I think it's just knowing the positives and negatives of each, right? And then you just got to make a business decision from there on what does your business look like, and a lot of those things. There's no right or wrong. It's just how do you want to run your business, right?
Yeah, it's the greatest part about real estate actually is that it's so flexible. There's so many ways to make money. There's so many opportunities, so many different asset classes you can get into. There's so many different structures. There's so many different ways to pay for it. You can do everything from like sub to seller financing, partnerships, bank loans, or a combination of all of them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Lots of ways, lots of ways. You just got to be, if you're doing just hey, I'm going to go put 20% down and get a bank loan, that's pretty limited. There's all sorts of other ways to get into real estate for sure.
Yeah,
Let's
we
jump
do
back.
this
Go
now,
ahead.
really quick. Like, so one thing we do now is we'll actually form partnerships where one of the persons has more, maybe more capital than the others, and it'll be like two or three people in the partnership, and that person will end up loaning the money to the LLC that we all own collectively for the down payment. So it's like an unsecured loan to the LLC. And what's great about that is you can get into these bigger deals where you've got a bank loan. The bank doesn't care what partner puts the money in as long as there's partner capital in generally, and it works really really well. I bought a 16 unit apartment building a couple of years ago where I ended up with 40% of it and had $0 in because of a
Awesome.
partnership arrangement. And we ended
Very
up selling
cool.
it. We bought it for 750. We sold it for 1,350,000 like 2 years later. So I mean, I made $150,000 on a zero investment. I mean, that's amazing, right? I
That's
mean,
pretty
like,
good returns, right? Yeah. Yeah, but your role was different, right? You probably sourced the deal, or you were managing the deal, or everybody's
Yeah, of
bringing to
course,
the
and
table.
and you do have to be a little careful when you do stuff like that, that you're not accidentally getting into securities or something, so that people need to be actively involved. But yeah, in that case, it worked out really really well for everyone that was involved. I know, of course, our capital partner was super happy too because that person made a big chunk of cash also.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yep. Let's jump back again really quick to that journey that you went on, from bankruptcy to financial freedom. What are some things that you did? I mean, we talked about the kind of the couple steps that you took and just taking that leap and just making it happen. But were there any like disciplines or habits or mindset things that you had to go through to help you get from that bad financial spot to being financially free 7 years later?
yeah, I mean, part of it was just believing that I could do it, right? Like I never lost faith in myself. And that's because I've had years of mindset work. I alluded to this earlier in the show about how I gave up bad days when I was 17, and believing that every day is a good day, and believing that every challenge we go through is just a learning experience really helps with that.
Yeah,
It would have been really easy for me to be like, "Oh, I'm a failure," or "Oh, I'm going to die," and just kind of curl up in the corner and not do anything. But I just never believed that. I've always believed that we're put here on earth for a reason and that we have to live the best version of our lives. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what does that look like for me and how do I do that? And really the leukemia motivated me a lot. And every day I take a oral chemotherapy, even to this day, 15 years I've been on this chemotherapy drug.
wow.
And and it's a constant reminder of my own mortality. And it's a constant reminder that like I have to live fully and completely. And part of that was if I wanted to be able to travel and have the time freedom that I wanted. And I mean, this year, in the last 2 years, I think I've been to six of the seven continents in about 20 countries, and that's coming out of
Wow, that's
COVID,
awesome.
right? Like, and I'm going to Australia in the summer, and that will make seven in less than a 2 year period. And like, including Antarctica, right? Like, I went to Antarctica last year. I mean, that's just crazy when you think about it. But I mean, it's an amazing amount of time freedom. And I live half the time in Chattanooga and half the time in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and not for tax reasons. A lot of people are moving to Puerto Rico to save on taxes, and I actually technically live in Chattanooga because I don't pay tax anyway. I'm a multifamily investor, and it's given me this amazing lifestyle that's just unreal. But it's also allowed me to be exposed to like amazing people and tell my story to help people. Like if I could help your listeners with anything, it would be I would want them to give up bad days. Like that to me, like more important than being successful in real estate. It is important because it's time freedom is super valuable, but there are other ways to get time freedom. There are no other ways to that I know of to live as extraordinary a life as I do, other than giving up bad days.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So you've mentioned no bad days several times. That's obviously a huge mindset thing for you, and you just wrote a book
I did.
called No Bad Days, right? So
Yeah, I did.
talk about the
Yeah, let's
book,
look that.
and yeah,
No bad
awesome.
days. Yeah, so people
Yeah,
are watching, they can see it. Yeah, so the book's it is more of my journey than it is a self help book. It's a memoir self help book. It's written as a series of life lessons, things that I learned along the way. It starts with how I gave up bad days. That's like chapter one, right? So the publisher said, let's call it No Bad Days. It's a catchy name. I would have probably called it something different, but I'm happy with the name because it seems to be working. And but it basically takes us through this series of things that I've gone through in my life and how I've framed my decisions and why I think it's important for other people to figure out what their life purpose is and also like how to figure out a way to live the best version of life. The way I think about it this way, like Ben, there's only one of you in the world, right? If you don't do the things that you're supposed to do, whatever those are, you're kind of cheating yourself, but you're also cheating your family, your community, and the world of all that greatness that you could do.
yeah.
And none of
That's
us are going to live fully in our potential, except for unless maybe we're Elon Musk. I don't know. Maybe that guy's living fully in his potential. And somehow I figure he's still got stuff to accomplish. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like if we have this ability to do something great, we have to do it. And so that's what
that's
I'm trying
that's
to teach
great.
people.
Yeah, that's great. Another thing that the mentor I mentioned earlier says he has a phrase that he says, if you're able, you're obligated, right?
Yeah, same
Which I think
concept.
is great, right? It's really easy to be kind of self-absorbed, especially in those situations. Like, man, I just got to survive right now, right? But then when you get to the point where you're able to help other people, if you're able to do it, then to kind of sit back and no, I did my thing, and here I am. I did what I needed to do. I'm financially free, and then just kind of keeping it to yourself. That's not really what we're supposed to be doing. We should, if you're able to help others, hand up, whatever that looks like. It may not be the same as what you can do. We've all got that ability to do that in some way.
Right.
Then your obligation is to do that, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, that's why I go on shows like yours and why I wrote the book. I mean, I don't expect to make money from the book. I mean, we had some pretty good sales. I mean, it just came out April 25. So, and we ended up being the number one new release in personal finance on Amazon. And I was like, that's crazy because I don't even think of it as a personal finance book, but
Mm. Right.
I'll take it, right? Number one best-selling author. So that's something, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, but at the end of the day, like, I mean, yeah, exactly. You just have to do these things. Like, I have to tell people about my story because it helps people. And I found this out from the book. Like, as we were doing the pre-launch stuff, I started having people send me messages that said things like, "I'm so excited for your book. I heard you on XYZ podcast, and I haven't had a bad day in 2 years or a year or 6 months, and all this stuff." And I went, man, this is amazing. Like even if no one read the book, just the fact that people were telling me these stories what made it worth it. All this time that I've spent, I've probably been on, a couple hundred podcasts over the last 5 or 6 years, and plus my own. I have the old fashioned show that you talked about, which is super fun because we just drink old fashions, right, and talk about real estate on YouTube. But also have the Last Life Ever podcast. So, I mean, between all that stuff, there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of hours dedicated towards getting the message out. And I think it's all worth it if I change like one person's life, right? Like if one person has one less bad day, it might be worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yep. Yeah. Well, no, your story is obviously inspiring, and appreciate you sharing it and putting it out there. I know you're changing people's mindset and changing the trajectory of their life. So that's awesome. Um, if someone's listening right now and they're in the spot that you were in, they're in a bad financial spot. They're trying to figure out, what do I do next? What one or two things would you tell them? Hey, do this, or what advice would you give them if
Well,
someone's in
yeah, I
that
mean,
spot?
obviously it depends on how bad their financial spot is, right? Because you've got that whole Maslow hierarchy of needs thing. Like, if you don't have money for food, you need to go buy food. Like, let's be honest, right? Feed yourself, feed your kids, feed your family, that stuff. That's first, then shelter. But once you've got those like sort of base needs taken care of, which I think most people that are taking the time to listen to podcasts probably have those things taken
Yeah,
care of.
yeah,
So um, once you have that kind of base need, it's just about like sort of thinking about where you want to be 2, 3, 4 years in the future, and then coming up with a realistic plan and work backwards from that future point. And then also like don't neglect the mindset stuff because it's one thing to say, "Oh, I want to have $10,000 a month coming in or whatever." I hear that number all the time from people when I coach people. They're like, "Oh, I want 10,000 a month," and I'm like, "But why? What do you want it for?" Right? The money isn't going to motivate you. What's going to motivate you is getting really really clear on what's important to you, like what's actually important.
yeah,
Because the money is just a symbol of like, what are you going to do when you don't have to work? Like what? And can we do that now? So you need to get really clear on that why. And if you get your mind in the right place and you can align your thoughts and your actions together, then I think you'll be able to get to where you need to be.
yeah. That's great advice. I mean, so many people pick a number, and it's not even really coming from someone else said it, right? Or they think but it's what's behind that. The money's just a means, right, to whatever life that it is that you have and that you envision for yourself.
I don't even know my cash flow number, right? People ask me, "Oh, what's your cash?" I'm like, "I don't know. Might be negative for all I know. I don't care. As long as my bills are paid and I have the freedom, I still have enough money in my checking account to like buy a plane ticket on a whim. Like I'm in Chattanooga right now. I decided last week Monday at like 7 p.m. I wanted to go to Chattanooga, and so I just bought a ticket. And I flew out Tuesday morning. Like I don't think about it, right? I just do what I need to do, and as long as I can do that, I don't really care about the money. and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where you're going to get eventually if you follow the process.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. But really, to your point, getting connected to why it is you're doing it and not just, yeah, the funds, the money is important because that's how you pay your bills and everything. But if
Super
that's,
useful.
yeah,
It's very
yeah, if that's your
helpful.
only focus and there's nothing behind it, then it gets really difficult. It doesn't motivate you for very long if it's just about just the money, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are some people I think that are just like the money's a game to them, and they just want to see bigger and bigger
Sure.
numbers. But
Yeah.
that to me, that's never been my goal. I've always wanted to live, a happy and healthy life, and I feel like if I can do that, that's really great. And that's why you have to figure it out. That's why I would say start with the mindset. If and honestly, read books like Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like it isn't really a real estate book; it's a mindset book.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a memoir mindset book. It's kind of the same genre ish as mine, right? And I guess so. Maybe I am a personal finance book. What do I know? That's the number one personal
Very true.
finance book of all time. So
Yeah, very true. Well, that's awesome. Thanks again for being here. I'm going to ask you one more question here. So you've obviously come a long way. You're living the dream, as they say, right? What now? What's next for Jeff? What are your next goals? Do you have something that you're trying to hit right now, or is it just kind of that all encompassing? Hey, I'm out there telling my story. I want to affect lives. What does the next chapter look like for Jeff?
I'm writing a new book about Puerto Rico. Actually, we'll see. So I'm really interested in that. I'm trying to learn Spanish. My Spanish is atrocious right
Oh,
now.
me
So
too. It's hard.
I'm working really hard on that right at the moment. Um, I've got a few travel goals left. I have this 50-50-57 goal where I want to go to 50 countries and 50 states and 7 continents before I turn 50. And I've got the continents and states done, so I got to finish my country list. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like other than that, actually have a list of 100 things I want to do. I call it my life list, and I constantly update it. I try to keep it at 100. If I knock something off, I think of something new. So I always have something interesting to do. But as far as financial goals and stuff goes, no, I'm going to stay the course. I have a few other ideas of things, but mostly I just want to, keep sharing the message and can stay as positive as possible for as long as I can.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna leave with this quote, and I don't remember who said it. I wish I did, but your story reminds me so much of it. Where um, they say a man has two lives. The first life is before, and then the second life is begins when they figure out they just have just one. And I totally butchered that quote, but your second life,
Yeah,
basically, your life
I
begins
get the
when,
concept, right?
yeah, yeah, right. When you figure out you have just one life to live, that's when your second life starts, and that's kind of I feel like you had that diagnosis. It's like, hey, holy cow, and it's like I got to figure this out now. I just think that's so applicable. I wish I would have done better on the quote itself, but my point that I want to make is that hopefully it doesn't take an event like that um, to discover that, right? Hopefully it doesn't take some diagnosis for yourself, something happened to a family member, just that reality setting in that like, wow, there is only one life to live. I better live it. Um, do that now. Figure that out now. We only have one shot at this, right? So, you might as well give it everything you got.
Yeah, no, and that's I'm in a lot of ways fortunate that I got leukemia, right? Because it gave me that pivot point. Um, but we all are terminal. We all have one life, and the
Yeah,
sooner we realize that, the better.
exactly. And that was what I was trying to get with that butchered quote. But yes, very good. Well, if people want to reach out and connect with you, I'm assuming that's okay. What's the best way to do
Yeah, I
that?
mean, Instagram's probably the best at Jeffrey Holst. But honestly, I'm not hard to find. If you Google Jeffrey Holst, you'll see my book, my Instagram, my Twitter, my TikTok, my Facebook. It's all Jeffrey Holst everywhere. So
Awesome. Very good. Well, Jeff, thanks again for being here. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. You've got lots of stuff you're doing between your business and traveling and sharing your story. So appreciate you being on, sharing your story. Thanks for being here.
yeah, thank you.